I still remember the night when it began, or perhaps when it should have begun. The air outside was thick with the scent of rain that never fell, and the city slept under a trembling layer of fog. I was alone in my office, a single lamp painting long shadows across the floor. The clock on the wall had stopped at 11:47, though I hadn't noticed it yet. I was waiting for a call, an anonymous voice that was supposed to tell me about a case. I'd been promised it would be my most important investigation. But the call never came. The silence stretched, fragile as glass. And then, something odd happened. My desk phone clicked. Not rang. Clicked, as if someone had picked up on the other end and was listening. The faint hiss of static crawled into the room. I lifted the receiver. "Hello," I said. For a long moment, there was nothing, only the sound of slow, shallow breathing. Then a whisper, distant and broken, seeped through the line. "You weren't supposed to hear this." A cold current ran down my spine. Then the line went dead. That was how the investigation began, though, by every record, it never existed. No call logs, no client, no case file, just me and the echo of a voice that should have never reached me. After the line went dead, I sat for a long while, staring at the receiver in my hand. The silence around me thickened until it felt almost alive. I tried to shake it off, chalk it up to exhaustion or some cruel prank. But when I looked up, I realized something was wrong. My office wasn't the same. The lamp's light had dimmed, fading into a coppery hue like dusk behind dirty glass. My chair, the one I'd used for years, was facing the wrong way. The filing cabinet stood open, drawers yawning wide, papers spilled across the floor. And my own handwriting, thick and jagged, covered the walls. Notes about a case I'd never taken. One line repeated itself, scrawled again and again across the plaster. "Don't look for her. She's already here." I stepped back, heart thudding in my chest. The room smelled of iron and old rain, and in the far corner, where the shadows should have been solid, something moved. A faint shape, a silhouette. It looked like a woman standing very still, her head slightly tilted, watching me. "Who's there?" I demanded, though my voice was barely more than a whisper. She didn't answer, but I swear I heard her smile. And then the lights went out. When the lights died, the darkness wasn't complete. There was a faint pulse of amber from somewhere behind me, my cigarette ember still burning in the ashtray. That dim glow drew trembling circles on the walls, showing fragments of the words I'd written, or someone had written through me. I didn't move for several seconds. The air had changed again, heavier, denser, as if the room itself was breathing. Then, beneath the silence, I heard something faint, a rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from under the floorboards. 3 slow knocks, deliberate, patient, like someone trapped beneath the surface was asking permission to come out. I crouched, pressing my ear to the floor. The sound stopped. But in the ringing quiet that followed, I heard something worse, a whisper, right next to my ear, though my face was inches from the wood. "Too late, you already opened the door." I stumbled back, nearly knocking over the lamp. But there was no door open, none that I could see. And yet, the air behind me grew cold. A draft rolled across my neck, carrying a scent that didn't belong. Wet soil and lilacs, freshly cut. I turned slowly. There was a new door in the wall. One that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just a door. It was wrong in its proportions. Too tall, too narrow, the wood old but unrotted. Veins of something dark running through its grain like frozen blood. No handle, no keyhole, just a faint shimmer around the edges, as though it were breathing faint light from whatever lay beyond. I don't remember deciding to move closer, but my hand reached out on its own. The closer I came, the colder the air became. My breath misted. The city sounds outside, distant sirens, the hum of traffic, were gone. The world had pressed its finger to its lips. I touched the door. It felt warm. That was the first real terror. Then it knocked back. Not from behind, from inside. The vibration went up through my arm, into my chest. I stumbled backward, heart clawing at my ribs. And then, carved lines appeared across the surface of the wood, like something scratching from the other side. Slowly, they formed words, uneven, desperate. "Why didn't you answer the phone?" The same sentence repeated, growing deeper, angrier, until the wood began to splinter. I turned to grab my coat, to run, to get anywhere else, but the office door, my real one, had vanished. There was only the new door now, humming softly, waiting. And when I looked down, I realized something even worse. The phone cord from my desk was dragging across the floor, slipping under the new door, as if someone on the other side had picked it up. Then the phone began to ring. The sound was faint at first, a slow, steady brrring, muffled, like the phone was ringing underwater. It shouldn't have worked. The line had been dead for hours. Each ring felt longer than the last, and with every pulse, the wood of the door quivered as if it were breathing along with the sound. I told myself not to touch it. But curiosity is a cruel master, especially for someone who once called himself a detective. I lifted the receiver. Static. Then, a whisper, fragile as moth wings. You took too long. The voice was female this time, broken, trembling, like she'd been crying for years. Before I could speak, another voice joined hers, low and distant, somewhere behind her on the line. Male. Familiar. Don't listen to her. Hang up. My throat went dry. It was my own voice. Then came a shuffling sound, as if the phone were being passed from one hand to another. A brief silence. And finally, something breathed directly into my ear. You were supposed to find me in the dark. The connection snapped. I looked back at the door, and this time, it was open a few inches. A draft crawled through the gap, carrying a faint smell of burning paper and wet earth. Something moved beyond the threshold. Not footsteps, something dragging. And then, a hand, pale, too thin, fingers blackened at the tips, curled around the edge of the doorframe. It began to push the door wider. It opened slowly, like it didn't want to make a sound. The hinges didn't creak. They sighed, soft and deliberate, as though the door itself was tired of holding back what waited behind it. A thin ribbon of light spilled into the room, sickly yellow, more like rot than warmth. It didn't illuminate so much as stain everything it touched. My shadow stretched toward that light, long and trembling, and for an instant I thought I saw another shadow behind mine, following it, matching its every move. The air smelled of wet dirt and burnt hair. My stomach turned. Then she stepped out. At least, I think it was her. The woman whose voice I'd heard on the phone. She wore a long coat soaked in something dark, her hair clinging to her face. Her eyes, no, not eyes, just black glass, reflecting everything and nothing at once. She tilted her head, as though studying me, and whispered, "You came after all." My mouth was dry. I wanted to ask who she was, or maybe what, but the question never made it out. The lamp flickered behind me, and she smiled faintly. Her teeth were too many. "They told you not to look," she said. "Now they'll have to let you in." Before I could step back, the light from the doorway pulsed, and the room bent. Walls twisted like wet fabric, the floor turned soft beneath my feet, and for a moment I felt the impossible sensation of falling sideways. When I caught my breath, the office was gone. Only the ringing phone remained, somewhere far away, echoing through a corridor I'd never seen before. The sound of the phone was the only thing keeping me moving, that distant, hollow ring, drifting through the dark like a signal from the bottom of a well. The corridor around me stretched too far to belong anywhere real. The walls pulsed faintly with a damp sheen, breathing slow as a sleeping animal. I could smell mold, old paper, and a faint metallic sweetness. Blood, maybe, or something pretending to be it. Every few steps, the floor changed beneath my shoes. Tile, then carpet, then bare earth. Each time I looked down, the surface was different again, as if the world couldn't decide what it wanted to be. The ringing grew clearer. I saw a light ahead, a single bulb swaying from the ceiling, illuminating a small table. And on that table, the phone. My own office phone. It shouldn't have been there. The cord trailed off into the darkness, disappearing under the wall. I lifted the receiver with a hand that didn't feel like mine. Silence. Then a soft, deliberate inhale. "You finally found me." It was her again, the woman with the glass eyes. But her voice sounded closer now, not through the wire. Behind me. I turned. The corridor was full of doors. Thousands of them, stretching into the dark, all of them slightly open, all of them breathing. And from somewhere deep inside that forest of doors came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Many footsteps, moving closer to it first. The footsteps were slow, the cautious rhythm of someone afraid to be heard. Then they began to multiply. From every door down that endless corridor came a new pair of steps. Heavy, limping, dragging, Whisper light. A whole crowd of unseen walkers pressing closer, though I could see nothing but darkness between the door frames. The ringing phone in my hand began to melt into static. Between the bursts of noise I thought I heard words. Half-sentences, unfinished thoughts. You opened. Find the rest. You're walking in your own. The bulb above me flickered violently, throwing strobe flashes down the hall. And in those brief shards of light, I saw faces behind the doors. Not human, or maybe too human. Pale, unfinished shapes like wax figures left too close to the fire. Each face had the same mouth, small, tight, and smiling. They began to tap against the wood, first softly, then harder. The corridor filled with the sound of 1,000 fists begging to be let in. I ran. The phone cord snapped taut and whipped from my hand, the receiver clattering to the floor and still crackling with whispers. I sprinted toward the darkness ahead, but the corridor only stretched longer, walls bending inward like ribs. And then, silence. Every door had stopped knocking at once. Something was waiting for me to breathe, to move. I took one cautious step forward, and from directly above, a voice said, calm and close to my ear, "You're walking the wrong way." I looked up. There was no ceiling, only stairs, rising into blackness, slick with something wet that I hesitated at the base of the staircase. Each step glistened as if it had been freshly painted, not with varnish, but with something thicker, darker. The smell hit first, rust and rain, the scent of iron after lightning. I told myself it was water. It wasn't. Still, I climbed. The stairs groaned beneath my weight, but the sound was wrong. Not wood, not stone. It was closer to breathing through teeth. The air grew thinner as I ascended, colder too, until every exhale came out as a white wisp hanging in front of me. Halfway up, I saw them. Names, carved into the steps. Hundreds of them, small and uneven. Some were scratched, so deep the surface split. Others half erased as though the stairs themselves had tried to forget. Then I saw mine. I stopped cold. The letters were fresh, the grooves still damp. My name, my full name, gleamed in the faint light leaking from nowhere. A whisper came from below. Keep climbing. She's waiting where you stopped existing. I turned, but the corridor was gone. No doors, no walls. Only the steps spiraling down into a vast, black pit that swallowed sound and memory alike. Above me, a faint light pulsed. Not yellow this time, blue, cold, distant. I climbed faster, the air thickening with every breath. And when I reached the landing, I found a door again. Old, familiar. My office door, the one I'd lost. Only now, someone had nailed a photograph to it. It was me, sitting at my desk, phone to my ear, staring into the lens. Behind me, in the picture, a woman stood in the corner. She was smiling that I stared at the photograph until my vision began to pulse. The image wasn't still. The woman's smile, faint, deliberate, seemed to breathe. Every few seconds her head tilted, just slightly, the way it had when I saw her step from the door. I reached out and touched the photo. The paper felt damp, almost warm. Beneath my fingers, something moved. The door shuddered in response. Then came a soft click, the unmistakable sound of a lock turning itself from the inside. The blue light above dimmed. My reflection in the doorknob, warped and metallic, began to twist, my features dragging into something unrecognizable. My mouth in the reflection moved before mine did, whispering words I hadn't yet thought. Don't let her see you remembering. A pulse of cold air brushed my neck. The photo peeled off the wood and fluttered to the floor face down. On the back, written in my own hand, was a message. You were supposed to stop at the 7th step. The handle turned. Slowly, deliberately. The door creaked open, revealing my office, or what was left of it. The room looked half-drowned, water lapping at the walls. Papers floated like white fish. My lamp was still burning, but the flames swayed under the water as if the air and sea had traded places. And in my chair sat the woman, her glass eyes fixed on me, her reflection trembling in the dark surface of the water between us. You came back, she said softly. That means it's your turn. I wanted to ask for what, but she raised a finger to her lips. Behind her, the phone began to ring again. And this time, the ringing came from inside my coat pocket. I froze. The ringing was muffled but clear, vibrating against my chest, a slow, steady pulse like a heartbeat. I slipped my hand into my coat pocket, half expecting to feel nothing at all. But the phone was there. My old office phone, small enough to fit in my palm now, its cord coiled tight around the receiver like a snake swallowing itself. The woman watched me. She didn't move, didn't blink. The water around her rippled, though I could feel no wind. The ringing stopped. Then, without touching it, the receiver lifted itself to my ear. "You shouldn't have answered," said my own voice. "But now you'll have to listen." I tried to throw it away, but my arm wouldn't move. The voice continued. Calm, measured, too familiar. "There was never an investigation. There was never a client. You created her because you needed a case that would look back." The woman smiled faintly at that. The corners of her mouth trembled, like she'd been waiting for those words. "You let her through," my voice said. "Now she remembers everything you tried to forget." The phone's casing began to melt, dripping through my fingers like tar. I dropped it, but it didn't fall. It hung in midair, the cord tightening, snaking back into my coat. The woman rose from the chair, water streaming off her like smoke. "You brought it with you," she whispered. "Now it's time to see where it leads." And from the floor beneath us came a new sound, deep, rhythmic, like something enormous turning in its sleep. The water began to tremble. The desk drawers started opening on their own, one by one. Inside each was a phone, and every one of them began to ring. The sound was unbearable, 100 phones ringing at once, each slightly out of sync. The noise came in waves, like the city itself was gasping through the walls. I stumbled backward as drawers kept sliding open, papers spinning through the damp air. Each receiver dangled by its cord, swaying gently, as if waiting for a hand that already knew the answer. The woman moved closer. Her footsteps didn't make ripples on the water. It parted for her, like it knew her. "They're not calling you," she said softly. "They're calling through you." One of the phones nearest to me stopped ringing. Then another. In the silence between tones, I began to hear voices. Dozens of them, whispering through the lines. Some pleading, some sobbing, some repeating fragments of my own words. Words I'd spoken in other cases, other nights. "Tell me what you saw. Where did she go? There's always a body." I realized, with a creeping dread, that they were all my own cases. Every unsolved mystery, every half-forgotten report, echoing back through the phones, bleeding together into one great, collective confession. The woman placed her hand on my chest. It was cold enough to burn. "Now you understand," she whispered. "You never investigated them. They investigated you." A flash of light cracked through the ceiling. For a heartbeat, I saw faces beneath the surface of the water, countless of them, eyes open, mouths moving in unison. They were all looking up at me, and they were all smiling. Then every phone stopped ringing at once. The silence roared. Something in the darkness exhaled. The woman turned her head toward the far wall, where another door was forming, slowly, as if the water itself was carving it from the air. "You can still leave," she said. "But you won't be you when you do." The door grew out of the darkness like a wound healing the wrong way, edges rippling, seams knitting together from water and shadow. It didn't look built. It looked remembered. The woman stepped aside, her glass eyes catching the dim light like twin moons. "Go on," she said, her voice quieter now. "Every investigator comes here eventually. You just came sooner." I hesitated. Behind me, the sea of phones hung silent and still, their cords drooping into the water like the roots of some black plant. I thought I heard faint static still whispering beneath the hush, words too soft to catch, maybe my name, maybe nothing at all. When I touched the door, it felt alive. Warm again, that same, unsettling warmth of skin that shouldn't breathe. My reflection stared back at me from its surface. Only this time, it wasn't matching my movements. I, was already on the other side, facing away, a silhouette under dim light. I turned to the woman. "What happens if I open it?" Her answer came slow, like she had to remember the words. "Then you'll finally know what never happened." The handle turned before I could decide. A cold wind pulled me forward, dragging me through the threshold. I stumbled, reaching for balance, and when my vision cleared, I was back in my office. Perfectly normal. Dry. Silent. The lamp burned steady. The clock ticked. Only one thing was wrong. The phone on my desk was already off the hook, and from it came a whisper, my voice again, calm and tired. "Don't hang up this time." The receiver dangled an inch above the desk, swaying gently, as if an invisible hand still held it. The sound from the speaker wasn't quite static. It was breathing, slow and deliberate, the kind of sound a person makes when they've been waiting too long. I reached for it. My fingers trembled. Before I could speak, my voice, my own voice, began talking on the other end. "You never stopped the recording," it said. "Everything since the first call has been evidence. You just forgot what for." I tried to answer, but my throat locked up. The air in the room had thickened again, and each breath tasted like dust and old electricity. "Do you remember," it continued, "the case that disappeared? The one no one assigned you? You were supposed to destroy it." I could hear paper rustling, my case notes, my handwriting, then the scrape of a chair moving on wood. The sound wasn't coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from behind my desk. I moved around it slowly, pulse hammering in my ears. And there I was, sitting in my own chair, phone pressed to my ear, face pale as porcelain. My eyes were open, unfocused, fixed on the wall. The other me turned, ever so slightly, and smiled. "You're late," he said. "She's already gone through." The lights flickered once, twice. Then every bulb in the room burst at once, showering sparks into the dark. When the glow faded, I was alone again, or almost. The phone still hung from my hand, warm, alive, whispering one final phrase on repeat. "You're the last question she couldn't answer." And from somewhere inside the receiver, very faintly, came a second voice, hers. "He's almost here." The air had gone still, that perfect, terrible stillness that comes when the world holds its breath. The phone in my hand grew heavier, as if something were leaning through it, pulling against me from the other side. "He's almost here," she had said. The line crackled once more. Then came a sound I knew too well, slow footsteps, measured and echoing, drawing closer from nowhere. I looked around. My office was exactly as it had been before the first call. The lamp, the clock, the window facing the empty street. But everything had the wrong weight. The shadows clung too tightly. My reflection in the window blinked a second too late. The footsteps stopped just behind me. I turned, and there was no one there. Only my desk, my chair, and a single manila folder lying neatly in the center. The tab read case number 000, though I'd never seen such a number before. I opened it. Inside were photographs of everything that had happened. The door, the woman, the corridor, even me on the stairs. Each image dated before the night had ever occurred. At the bottom of the stack was the last page, a typewritten report. I read the first line. "Investigator found deceased in his office at 11:47 p.m. Case never initiated. Cause, unknown." The clock on my wall began to tick backward. 11:46. 11:45. The phone rang again. This time, I didn't answer. The sound echoed once, twice, then faded, swallowed by the silence that started everything. The light from the lamp dimmed to nothing, leaving only my reflection in the window, a figure still holding the receiver, forever waiting for a call that would never come. And somewhere beyond the glass, faint and patient, her whisper lingered. "You finally investigated yourself." The case closed itself with a soft click.